You are a god, girl!
Little minnow, my little minnow.
I kept reading crotch.
What about the mermaids?
I think you're more upset at this book than me.
Hi, I'm Aurora.
I'm Violet.
And this is the T.N.I book club. Today we're going to be talking about Female Fantasy by Iman Hariri-kia.
Mm-hmm.
I picked this book because I was at Barnes & Noble. I read the author's note at the beginning, and I almost never read the author's note, but there were some really, really great points that she was making about romance and how people view the romance genre, and I really appreciated it, and it made me curious about the book. And so I'm going to read the premise. All's fair in love and lore. Junie is living in a fantasy. At least that's what people keep telling her. A copywriter by day and fanfic auteur by night, Junie continues to date and dump disappointing men in search of happily ever after. But every potential suitor seems to have one flaw in common. They can't hold a candle to her book boyfriend, Reich, the protagonist of her favorite fantasy romance series, and, notably, a sexy merman. Reich is a symbol for the life Junie craves and the kind of relationship she deserves. So, with a book always in her back pocket, why would she ever settle for less? But when Junie learns that Reich's character is based on someone the author knows in real life, she embarks on an epic quest to track him down, meet him in person, and to determine once and for all if soulmates really do exist. Unfortunately, her brother's annoying best friend, who doesn't believe in love or happy endings, insists on hitching a ride. And like any great hero's journey, it doesn't take long for the trials and tribulations to begin. As Junie fights her way towards her love interest, using the skills she acquired through reading, she'll learn an important lesson. You can pursue a fantasy, but you can't always write your own plot. As unhinged as it is brilliant, Female Fantasy is a self-aware dive into a concept, genre, and a wild, steamy romp. Most of all, though, it's a heartfelt love letter to romance readers everywhere. When I suggested this book, before you started reading, what were your expectations?
I wasn't expecting much. And that's only because I am. So, you know, the people she was talking about in the beginning, where she was like, oh, they devalue romance. That's me, unfortunately. I do not have a good track record of reading romance and enjoying it. But you wanted to read it, and I was like, you know, it's Valentine's Day, so I'll give it a chance. And so I read it. And I did not read the synopsis before jumping in. So I just kind of went in blind. And I was a little bit hopeful for the mermaid bit because I like mermaids.
Okay.
What about you?
This is going to be crazy to talk about. So, like, I was very hopeful and really excited. I used to read romance all the time when I was much younger, but I moved away from it as I got older. But then I recently was like, you know, I want to get back into reading some stuff, and what more fun than an adventurous romantic comedy to kind of kick that off. But oh boy, do I have thoughts.
Let's just get into it.
So as it says in the synopsis, she's got like this favorite romantasy book. And so throughout our segments of this romantasy book, and that's how this book starts. For me, this was a poor way to start the story. I don't typically read romantasy because the ones that I have read, they're written in a way where it reads more like YA to me. And I don't like, and I don't want to like, I have to be careful about what I say because I don't like to yuck people's yums. If you like romantasy, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure there are probably some really great romantasy books out there that I have not read. But the common thing that I found, especially with a lot of the really popular romanticities, is just like I just cannot connect with the writing style. I already struggle enough with fantasy as is as a genre. And so I mean, I just like my romances usually to be grounded in reality, to be honest.
Magical realism.
I magical realism sometimes, but more so like I like more on the literary fiction side, something
Okay.
that could actually happen to somebody.
Mhm.
But I mean, again, I just read Love of My Afterlife, and that book is magical realism, and I loved it.
Okay.
But again, going back to this book. This I just didn't like how it was written. It's very like it was never my intention to steal the conch. I kept reading it in that kind of
I kept reading
voice.
crotch. I kept reading crotch.
Of course, of course. But I did connect a little bit in the beginning,
Okay.
towards the end, where Mariah is talking about like how she put so much work. Mariah is the main character of the fantasy book, by the way. She had put so much work into her marriage, even though it wasn't always the most comfortable situation for her emotionally. And for him to just cast her out like she was nothing, felt. And that's what made me continue.
Damn. I didn't connect with it at all. Not personally. I was just kind of reading it and I was like, I wasn't a fan of the opening scene either. But once I got into like the main plot of the contemporary bits with Junie and Nico and all that good stuff, I was really into it.
Same.
In the beginning, even though uh it did read like YA throughout the entire book, in my opinion.
Mm.
It didn't bother me too much in the beginning, and I did laugh a couple of times, and it was funny.
Yeah.
It was only when, because I didn't read the synopsis, so I didn't know that it mentioned that Nico does come with her on the trip. It was only when Nico was like, "I'm going on the trip with you," where I was like, "Okay, so they're endgame." So, and then I started realizing, like, I already knew the plots,
Mm-hmm.
and this is an issue that I had with romance, is that and honestly horror sometimes too, like but I read a lot of horror to the point where I just kind of know what's going to happen. But with romance especially, it's like, okay, so Nico goes on the trip with her. What's going to happen is she's going to meet this real world Reich guy who's Ryan, and she's going to realize he's not the man for her, and then she's going to be like, "Oh, Nico, I'm sorry." And then they end up together. And so when I kind of put the puzzle pieces together on like the seventh chapter and there's 25, I was kind of like, well, now I know what's gonna happen. But I was hopeful because when they got kidnapped, I was like, wait, something's gonna happen. And I was getting excited. And then in the very next chapter, she gets out and
Well,
does everything right.
I don't necessarily mind when I know where the plot is going. So, like, I knew also as soon as Nico entered the picture that he was going to be the one that she ends up with, right? But for me, I'm very much in the house of like, it's not about the destination, but the journey. So, if there was an execution of the events that got them to each other, then that's interesting to me. And that's why I also was like, ooh, they got kidnapped. Like, where is this gonna go? Because I wasn't expecting that at all. Like,
Mhm.
I was like, ooh. But I think this was not executed well enough
She did not even read
to
on Mafia, and I know that for a fact because of how she wrote the Mafia. And let me just say this, and this is actually towards the end, but and I don't want to be that person to be like, "Oh, it's not realistic or anything," but like you can tell that all of her Mafia knowledge she got either from other fiction books or she just did a couple of googling about which mafias were there, which there's a lot in New York, and then just did whatever she felt like. And one thing that gets to me is like towards the end, the mafia people are imprisoned, right?
Mhm.
They go to jail, the feds get them. That would not be the end. They would not be safe. More people would come out. You can't imprison someone who's a relative. He was like a nephew, right? The shrug guy.
Mhm.
He was like a relative of the big bad mafia boss, right? And she sends him to prison, and then they're just okay.
But like the thing is, for me, I was like, I the mafia part was like such a small part of the
Yes,
story.
and it wouldn't be like that in real life. It would
Yeah.
take over everything that's happening because the mobs would be going after them.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say is just that like it's such a small part of the story. I didn't give a fuck about the accuracy. But my thing is the way she gets kidnapped is so stupid to me. They get in this car crash, and Nico is over here like, bro. She even says, and that's something I wrote in my notes. I was so annoyed with. I was like, before any of this starts, she's like, my parents told me to be cautious of like white people driving around trying to blah 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 blah. And then what does she do? Immediately
Gets in their car.
gets in their car,
Yeah!
tells them all their business, their real names. Why even include that that was her internal thought if she's just going to go ahead and just do it anyway?
Because I'm fine for her being naive.
Right.
I'm okay with that. But the problem is that throughout the entire book, she's written like she's intelligent, and she's not.
She speaks a bunch of different languages.
Hmm.
She knows all of this self-defense stuff. And again, like it's not that it's not real, because there are people all the time, like just because you know, and that's why this other book I read called The Compound was interesting, because that character, she never claimed to be smart. She was like, actually, she's like, intelligence is one of the least things that I value in a person. And I was like, because there are plenty of people who know things, but they're fucking stupid. And that's what this, that's what it felt like with Junie. I was like, Junie knows a lot, but Junie also is constantly making these bad choices. The thing that really made me mad about this book was that she finds a resolution with Nico at page 230.
You remember
And
the page?
Because I wrote it down, because I even wrote in my notes, they have sex with each other.
Getting close to the camera.
They squash the beef that they had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I said, book ends here. There's literally no reason to continue, especially if they're going to end up together in the first place. Okay, so immediately after they have sex and squash all their beef, what does she fucking do? Well, I should still check about Ryan, right?
Yeah.
And it's not even like it's a passing internal, like, wouldn't it be funny? No, she's like determined to the point of telling Nico.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you fucking serious? What do you mean? And she's just like, well, and then the other infuriating thing.
I think you're more upset at this book than me.
That's what I'm talking, because like I was like, this book was not perfect from before then, but I really think that this was in massive need of an editor, because
yes! Oh my god, wait, I'm sorry.
Because I'm like, if you don't fucking like this 230 is like around the page where like all that stuff happens. Literally, look at my note. I said I love this and the book here.
Mm-hmm.
You can even fast forward the scene where he went to see his mother at some point, because I actually like that scene.
I love his mother.
I loved his.
I was like, yes, queen.
I loved Nico's mom, and I loved exactly what she had.
I want a book about her and her marriage and her getting cheated. Fuck him,
girl.
I want to know about her.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, but like, but again, I'm like, why? I think if you were gonna have it where you're less certain about how you feel, don't let them have sex and already have the conversation that needed to be had in the first place. Because I was like, I felt like everything was resolved at that point, and there was no purpose for her to continue besides her being a fucking dumb bitch.
Yeah.
and that was like what set me off, because I'm like, why would you do this to yourself? Not only to yourself, but to Nico.
So your qualms with the characterization is in Junie, mostly, right?
Yeah.
Mine is with Nico. I didn't like him. I thought he was boring as a not a protagonist, as a love interest.
No, you want to know who's boring as a love interest? Reich.
Yeah. Wait. Hold on. Let me talk about Nico.
Okay, sorry.
Let me talk about Nico, and then we can talk about Reich, because he's the same thing. I don't like Nico because honestly, in the beginning, he's negging her the whole time. It feels like to me, because they bring it up in the book. The only time he does talk to her is to call her delusional, which she is. But I mean, I was kind of annoyed. I was like, why are you negging her all the time? It's obvious you just want to fuck her.
But all of the conversation when he started getting negative is because she started being negative with him first.
That's true. I just thought he was boring. I was like, every time even when they got kidnapped and he was acting like that, I was like, so boring. So when they're kidnapped, basically Nico freaks out, and which is natural. But it was him commenting on like, why are you so calm? That to me felt like it was the author feeding us a little bit to focus more on her being calm instead of them being kidnapped. And I don't know how to explain it more than saying that. And so basically she gets them out of the restraints. She kind of guides him along, and then they get out and she hot wires a car, which is not easy to do. And then her response to knowing all of this survival stuff is reading romance. And I'm like, girl, you did not learn to hotwire a car from reading romance. I'm sorry. You can't learn how to hotwire a car from reading romance. And you can't earn a black belt in Taekwondo, which takes years for her from romance.
Well, she said she was inspired to do it because of the romance.
But you didn't learn it. You learned it from your own hard work, your own determination. It wasn't reading romance
but I think
that lets you learn how to hotwire a car, which it's weird that she would know how to do that with how naive she is, because you need to practice. And what are you going to practice on? Your own car?
I think the whole point of that though is that it's not that she literally learned it from reading a book like this and she was like, this is how you hotwire. She was introduced to the idea, which made her curious about it to learn for herself.
But in the book, it mentions, in the romantasy book, it mentions that he teaches her how to get out of restraints.
Yeah, but she doesn't even go into detail about how to get out of restraints in that section. And that's why I'm like, maybe I'm giving this author too much of a benefit of a doubt for saying that that's what she was trying to say with that. Because I have read books where they talk about certain things and I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought about that. And then I start looking into it and then I start implementing it into things in my life. And that's why I'm like, I understand where she was coming from with that, because yeah, that's happened for me. And but I'm not going to sit here and be like, I learned how to, or make a movie from horror movie. But I'm just saying like, but yeah, like again, like there are certain things that it did inspire me to go and look into though. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think the way this was executed doesn't make that clear enough if that was her intention or not.
And now that I talked about Nico, can I talk about Reich?
Please.
The entire book, I hated the romantasy part. Genuinely.
Me too.
And because at the beginning of the book, I'm excited to read the romantasy part more because she brings up how she sees herself in Mariah, right? And then all the romantasy part is Reich explaining everything to her and reassuring Mariah she's perfect. Even towards the end, when Mariah is found out to be part god, she's still like, oh, I don't deserve it. I can't do it. I'm like, you are a god, girl. And I didn't like Mariah's character at all.
Neither. Oh my God.
If I found out I was part god, I start a cult, dude.
Of course. But like, my thing is, these fantasy parts were nothing but exposition or just a preview of what we were going to have in the following chapter. We could have dealt with a significant cut of those parts. And that's, again, where is the editor? Because it almost feels like she was told that she needed to have like a certain amount of pages.
Yeah.
And she was like, in order for me to get to this page count, I'm just going to include parts of this. We don't need this entire romantasy book in this at all. I would have preferred it even if it was just in, like, if we divide the book into part 1, 2, 3, a little bit section of the romantasy book for each section, just so we can get a little bit of an understanding where Junie was coming from. But for it to be literally throughout the book was so unnecessary.
Yeah. And especially towards the end, it felt like they were dragging it out. I was like, okay, so she accepts him, whatever.
And what the fuck is this little minnow shit? You know what a minnow is? Yeah. You know what a minnow is?
I thought it was degrading a little bit.
It is. I looked it up on Wikipedia because it kept pissing me off. That was his fucking term for her. Little minnow, my little minnow, my minnow. A minnow is one of the most common tiny fish used typically as bait. And they look
Nah,
fucking basic.
I want my man to call me Big White Shark. I'm a white shark.
Please don't emphasize the white.
White.
She said, I am
so
a white shark.
White. Is there a black shark?
You know, I don't know.
I don't know. Because you know how there's like a white rhino and then like a black rhino?
Editing,
I think one of them's extinct now.
Note to editing Aurora, look up if a black shark is a thing. You can tell I got very heated about it.
He was like her dad, bro.
Girl,
like,
right?
Coddling her, yeah.
Yes.
Coddling her, being like, no, it's okay. I'll take you back whenever. But also, can you save my people for me?
And again, like some of the most empowering romances and stuff that I've read, the self-assurance and that stuff does not actually come from the romantic character. It comes from the realization that the character gets from other things that they have been through or go through throughout the book that makes them realize it so that they are able to accept love.
And I got some screenshots, okay? Because I don't think she got an editor, genuinely. And if she did, maybe she got some beta readers, but she needed like, and I'm not talking about just the plot. I think her writing too. Like there would be bits, and I do this as well, where you know how like sometimes you'll break up the paragraphs and do like one-liners to like emphasize things, because I do that too. And sometimes I go back and I edit it, and I'm like, okay, this can be part of the paragraph, right? But she did it all the time, and she did it more often as the book went on, especially towards the end. And it doesn't need to like. So here's one example. This is a home. Next line. A safe space to start over. Next line. To get to know yourself again. That can be part of the paragraph above it, because she literally mentions, even standing in the entryway, I can tell this isn't merely an apartment. And then she can just say those last 3 sentences, part of that paragraph, and it would have the same effect. I'm bad at grammar and punctuation too, like all the time. And that's why I edit my shit and I reread it and I get beta readers. But this is the very last chapter, I'm pretty sure. And she goes like, my very own upper shoal. Next line. They're here to defend me. Next line. Fight for me. Next line. With me. Next line. To remind me once for all that I am not in this alone. Next line. I hear police sirens swelling in the distance. Next line. Angel's smile only grows. Next line. Don't screw with the salty girls, they say. Next line. The shrug hesitates, lowering his gun. The shrug is the mafia, dude. Next line. And then Angel takes a big swing. That can be one fucking paragraph. But it's all separated into separate lines. And she does this throughout the entire book. And it did eventually mess things up for me.
Yeah.
It messes up the cadence.
Because some of that, like, I feel like can be done for like pacing, right? I love to read my books out loud, and like sometimes that does help where I'm like, okay, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to emphasize this especially. But yeah, it eventually, if you do use like anything else, if you use it too frequently, then it loses meaning. The other thing, writing wise, that I really struggled with is that there were so many phrases that were reused. This is mostly with the fantasy part. I felt like this was happening a lot with. And I'm like, you do not need to constantly look for similes and metaphors to try and elevate your writing. This could have been way more effective if you just wrote it directly, especially when it comes to the sex scene. I mean, there's only really 2 sex scenes in the book.
It reads like a fanfic.
And the sex scene, I obviously, like, just like everything else, I much preferred, actually enjoyed the contemporary sex scene a lot. I was
really?
like, I thought it was fun.
I didn't understand it, because the part where he like flips her around so she's facing the city, and then he like sucks on her boob, her titty. I'm like, are you like under her? Are you like over her going like, you know what I mean?
I didn't read it like that.
Like, maybe we should reread it.
We looked over the scene, and Violet's right. She doesn't specifically say that he turned her over again before he starts chomping on her titties.
Yeah, so you should know where your characters are at all times in the story. That is something, like, here's the thing. This is good for like a second draft or a third draft right, but an editor should catch that. So that's why I'm wondering, did she not get an editor at all? Because an editor should be able to say, like, hey, your characters, you need to write that he flips her around. Because what else is he doing? Is he leaning over her? Or is he like going under her armpit to try to get at her titties? Like, is he like I don't know.
That is funny. I mean, that's fair. A fair criticism.
My titties are small. They cannot wrap around my back, dude. You can't like. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, that's a fair criticism. But I still enjoyed the scene overall significantly more than the detailed fucking weird ass.
I agree with that.
With the fucking mer people. First of all, him talking about teaching her about tail play was disturbing. I don't want to fuck with your fishtail. Get that shit away from me.
Smells fishy.
Girl, the fact that this is an included detail in both the fantasy novel and brought up several times in the contemporary part, where the size of the tail determines the size of the dick.
How big is your dick?
Hated it. And the tail's constantly being described as like thick and heavy.
Girthy.
Ew. And then also, I'm just like, okay, well, what about the women? What about the mermaids? And that was the other thing about like the fantasy part. I really struggled with understanding how some of it worked. I get that they can shift between having a tail or not. Some of them can. But like,
it has to be special.
Yeah, and then I didn't understand the bubble thing that he gave her so she could breathe, or that she was in. There were constantly times where I was like, okay, well, is there water around them?
Which is ironic because he literally only explains anything every time he talks.
I know. Just in general, like when you read a sex scene, what is your preference? How it's written, what is your preference for a sex scene?
I need a balance, genuinely. I need to know what the characters are doing, for one. I like the spiciness, but it can't overshadow what they're feeling, because in my opinion, sex scenes are a way to broaden your characters. They're a way to bond them and to make it seem like why they actually like them. So you need that feeling there, and I need to know whether it's through the dialogue or what they're feeling. And I would like it described well.
I agree. There has to be a balance. I don't like when they excessively use metaphors and similes, but I also don't like when it's super clinical. Like, I don't need you to be like, he spread my legs and his thumb grazed my labia majora. You know, I don't need it to be like that. Like, but
I mean, that might be interesting to read, actually.
No, I don't need it to be written like that.
I never want to see member used, ever. Yeah. I don't like the word. It sounds weird.
It's like,
just say dick, bro.
He's got he's got a fan club. He's got a member, just a single member in his fan club. I really loved how Nico was like, tell me what you like.
Yes. And I was like, I like that bit. I did like that bit. I was like, yes, sir.
She's like, I'm not begging. He's like, oh, you will. And I was like,
I know we already talked about it, but the mob did not have to be there. I don't like that it was there because in my mind, if you got involved, it's a contemporary romance, right? So there needs to be some realism. If you got involved with the mafia, that would take over the entire story. Like, it would become a story about the mafia, because the mafia, dude, if you're getting chased down by the mafia, that's all you're thinking about. They'll kill you. She brings it up in the book where she's like, it sounds like a thriller, but I hate thrillers. And I was like, then why did you bring in thriller aspects?
I literally thought that shit was so weird too.
And you're writing a book about people judging genres, and then you judge a genre while bringing that genre in. The mafia is 101 thriller shit that people write about.
Well, she also does that again in the beginning when Junie is like, oh, I can't stand these Disney adults. And I was like, you're literally writing fan fiction and going all the way off to meet a man based on a fictional character from a book that you read. How can you have the audacity to shit on Disney adults and you're practically doing the same thing?
I feel like Junie wasn't self-insert. I do. And I think this entire book was, I don't want to say a rant. I don't think it was a rant, but I want to say that I genuinely think that even Junie and Nico, like, especially at the end of the book where it's revealed that she's writing it. I don't know. Did you get that vibe?
I don't get bothered by self-insert stuff. But I think I have a problem with a lack of self-awareness. I don't mind things that are silly, but like have a little bit more care and intention. I agree with you when you were like, "Oh, this is a good draft," and then I'm like, again, where is the editor? I don't want to shit on this author because I do think that she had some good ideas, and writing is hard.
Very hard. Oh my god.
Writing is extremely hard. We're both writers. We're doing this all out of fun, and
she seems like such a sweet person.
Yes, it was the author's note itself that made me want to read this book in the first place. And even her acknowledgments seemed very, very sweet. Like I really hate feeling so negatively about this book, but I think this was just such a major opportunity missed. And I really wanted to show you that romance novels can be more than you think, and this was like the opposite example of that.
It just kind of proved my point more.
I know, and that's what was so disappointing to me. But I promise you, there are other books that I know for a fact you would actually like. I genuinely feel like you would love of My Afterlife.
Maybe I'll read it. I think I put it on my story graph already, but yeah, and since we're talking about the author, like, yeah, she seems like a super sweet, endearing person who had a good idea, but just bring in the editor, man. Just find an editor. And I think maybe she wasn't willing to invest in one. Maybe she can't afford one. I don't know. Whatever it is, maybe save up.
Let me talk about some positive things that I did really appreciate from the book, because I feel like we spent a lot of time already talking about the things we didn't like. So I loved, first of all, the representation. I love that she was Iranian American, and I felt very connected in what she had to say about growing up as a woman of color and feeling the need to dim yourself down because of what other people tell you is appropriate. That felt so real to me. Like her relationship with Kyle, where she was like so excited to find somebody who actually liked her, that she was so willing to ignore all the other shit, and how it just got worse and worse. And I especially appreciated the fact that she mentioned that that she had felt so much shame around that relationship that she was afraid to even leave. That's so real. And I think people can be very hard on anyone who's in an abusive relationship and continues to stay in that relationship. But you have to understand, like, it is not as simple as you think. Also, I really appreciated her talking about how when you are a person of color, sometimes people see you as just either something to be fetishized or as a fucking threat. And one of the scenes that I really liked the most was when she had sat down with the emo guy who looked like emo Reich, and he was just like, "Where are you really from?" And oh, we get these caramel colored girls. But
I cringed at that. I was like, "What the fuck?"
But it's a real experience. Like, I've had so many people, and especially because she was like pointing out that he had like a Bernie Sanders button, and he seemed like he was, more on like the liberal side, but like he had the audacity to talk to her like that because he could hide behind being like, I'm an ally. And that's some of the biggest bullshit that I can't stand. So I really love that she pointed that out.
Because I've never been asked that. I've never been like, so where are you really from?
Because you're white.
Yep. When I read that, it was jarring. And honestly, I wish she talked more about her childhood. Maybe this book would have been better as like if you scrap all of the mermaid stuff and then just go into more of her childhood a little bit and like more of her experience. Because I wish she went into her cultural background in the experience growing up in a, where was it, Mystic?
Yeah, and Mystic. And
with that.
Yes, and that's exactly my point too. Even if you do have a page quota, why would you waste so much of your time with this unnecessary part with the mermaid stuff when you could really be digging deep into your relationship with Mika, like growing up, your relationship with your brother? I liked her brother a lot.
I know, he was not in the story like at all.
I know. I was like, you could have spent so many more pages like developing the characters and their relationships with each other so that we could feel the stakes, and maybe we would feel more of a reason why she would go back and forth between,
like, what was
Miko
her reaction when he came out? Like,
Exactly. And
because, not everyone reacts well, and are they religious or not? I don't know. I think she did touch on it a little bit, but again, it was like a passing comment.
yes, and I was like, I just feel like there could have been more about things that actually mattered that would have made this book significantly stronger.
And I hate that I'm saying and I'm agreeing with you because I love mermaids and I wish the mermaid bit was like more interesting.
Yes. And the other thing that I also kind of man, I know I was like, let's talk positive, but I also want to point out the fact that she even mentions being white presenting, which I also think makes a big difference. And I think that's also a reason why she doesn't continue to talk about her experience as a person of color, because you can still, even though she did face a lot of like racism and just ignorance growing up, once she made her adjustments to herself as she described when she was older, she experienced it less and less, and we didn't see anything mentioned about her ethnicity in the later parts of the book either, which when you are somebody who is not white passing, it makes all of the difference. There was a point where she's describing Reich, and I thought Reich at first was a person of color because she
Yeah, she says
describes him
dark
as being
skin.
dark skinned
Is
and
he
tan.
not?
She brings it up when she's talking about Ryan, that he's tanner than somebody who has not been in blah blah blah. And I just, again, like, I'm like, if he's not white, then why would you mention it like that? Like, it was weird to me.
She was describing him as like brown. That's what I interpreted as.
As somebody who dates interracially all the time, I would like to say there is a difference between dating somebody who is white and has never experienced adversity in that way compared to somebody who is Asian, dark skinned Mexican, who or etc., who has had similar experiences and can understand where you're coming from. So I thought that that was interesting. And again, like, she's living in Mystic. She already pointed out that she's not, there weren't a lot of people of color. Like, seemed like she never really had the interest in even trying to date someone of color. I wish she had like mentioned that at some point, even in passing.
Or like someone who can relate to her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it seemed like her focus was like, I just want to be with a white guy, which is a whole thing. And this comes from like colorism and all sorts of other things.
Which isn't that just racism with extra steps?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So it's just, but that's where that mindset stuff comes from, because they're like, oh, let me breed out this darkness. Maybe this isn't a fair criticism, because again, where she was at, and that's just not the story she was trying to tell. But that just stood out to me, especially, and I just was like, I mean, I loved again how much she did talk about what it was like, but I don't know. I definitely felt like we could have taken out some of that bullshit mermaid shit and put more about who Junie actually was,
Or
outside
maybe
of that.
explore it with the mermaid stuff. I don't know how you would do that, but I'm a strong believer in that you can tell and express multiple ideas at once. So even if she kept the mermaid stuff, maybe you can cut all of the explanation of how the world works. And even then, it didn't have enough pages to flesh out the romantasy, because that's why it was info dumping the entire time, because to write high fantasy you need to build up the world, and that takes time, and it takes craftsmanship to not dump it all at once onto the reader, and you can't do that when it's only half the story.
And it made me feel like, I was like, if this is the book that Junie is so obsessed with, and please, I'm so sorry, I am about to shit on a huge fandom right now, but it reminded me of people who go fucking apeshit over Twilight. That's what it felt like with Junie being like so caught up in this book. And that's why it cracked me up when Nico was like, this is one of the best books ever.
You gotta really love someone to say that the bullshit they like is good.
Literally that. I do think that more men should read romance novels, or at least not even
They just need to read. I barely meet any men who read, honestly.
When I meet men who read, a lot of them are like, I don't read fiction.
I read a lot of nonfiction, but I also read fiction.
But that's another thing that I really loved. I loved that Nico, not only that he was reading the book that she was into, but he said that he had read all of her writing, and I
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
fucking loved
See,
that.
and that's one of the good parts is that there are some really lovely romance scenes, and there is some good dialogue, even though some of it is clunky, but there is some good dialogue. There's a good message overall. I thought the beginning was beautiful after you get through that first passage. And I think that's why I worked so hard on it, because it was really good, except for a few not good things.
Really quickly, because we didn't talk about it very much. His mom.
Oh, yes.
I loved that scene where we go and we see Nico's mom, who is the real woman he was trying to meet up with in New York, that we find out, of course. Well, there's several sections that I really loved. One was when she was saying, because Nico was so discouraged because of how his parents they grew up together, they dated each other from childhood, they married each other, had children, all of that, and it still didn't work out.
And his dad was a slut.
Yes.
Sorry.
His dad cheated on her with everybody, including her own sister, which was so wild. But
that's why I need a book about his mom, because that's crazy.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. But love that his mom was like giving the real advice. Like here she says, well, we were so young when we met, we didn't know that you're a new version of yourself every day, which means that every day you're in a new relationship with a new person. You have to keep checking in. And that is so real. Like a lot of people don't talk about that as being a part of being in a long-term relationship. Some people like have like this unrealistic expectation that you and your partner are going to stay the same way throughout the entire time. And that's not it. The whole point is to grow together, right? And so then she says, love isn't a bucket, baby. It's a well. And I have so much more love left to share. I loved that.
And then Junie ruins it by being like, oh, I love that. Oh, like, girl. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I love that part. Also, like the last part from this section that I really wanted to talk about is when she says, my marriage ended, but that wasn't the end of love. It was an evolution. Because love doesn't just disappear into thin air. No, sir. When I got divorced, I took all that love I had for your father and put it into myself. I said, preach.
Yeah.
Preach. I love that shit right there. And I was like, see, okay.
There's some beautiful parts about this book.
Really. And that's why it's such a shame that there was not enough editing done.
And I genuinely think that's it. There just wasn't enough editing.
Yeah. Girl, I don't even want to talk about the shit that started happening in the mermaid stuff, because I was just getting really annoyed with how that happened.
The villain monologue.
I didn't care about any of that.
Dude, when he reveals and he says locks, I'm just like, I lost it. I was like, what? There's more? And it's like towards the end of the book, like the last chapter. Their slang was so like oceany. And I thought it was so on the nose, and I didn't like it.
I hated it. I almost forgot about my favorite line.
It's a great example. Bring it up.
His finger plundered me like a pirate. Girl, what? It's so crazy.
I had to put the book down after I read that.
It was bad.
I took a break, and I clearly remember because my dog was with me. I put it down, and I was just like, I'm gonna make some tea, baby girl, to my dog. Okay. See, and that's what I'm saying is that if Junie's bit was written as a fanfic, that wouldn't bother me because it's like her voice. But this was written like a fanfic too. And I was like, bro, that shit, I only read in fanfiction. Because I bring up fanfiction because I used to read fanfiction when I was younger.
Yeah, I've never read fanfiction. But this is what romanticy books can be like. And that's why I don't. Yes.
And people like it?
People love it. And I don't want to shit on people for what they like to read, because I think as long as you're reading, that's what's important.
I think it's because people aren't exposed to the classics, or not the classics, but like a wide range of literature in general when they're young. Because my mother, I mean, I read all the classics, but I would read like, historical fiction. I read a lot of horror, which is where I get my love for it from. And my mother, she made me read quite a bit compared to my peers. And I think it's that lack of exposure that makes it people more likely to consume work that I don't deem as well written.
I think that you were very lucky to have somebody who would encourage you to read like this, because there are so many people whose parents don't even have time to talk to them about books in
Yeah.
general,
Mhm.
let alone read themselves. I think it's very hard, especially in the education
Oh
system,
my god, yeah.
where you're constantly being required to read these books that I think, especially if you're a person of color or a marginalized person in any way, shape, or form, that does not connect with you in any way, then it puts you off from reading, period. If you are only exposed to books that you don't like or can't relate to, then you'll be convinced that all books are the same.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think it is so important when to have librarians, because this is one of the purposes of a librarians, who can expose people and introduce people into things that they might like. And even if this book or a book like Twilight is what you enjoy, again, that's like opening you up to something that you might not have otherwise been doing. And reading in itself, regardless of its content, is good for your brain.
Period.
So yeah, read your romance, whether it's good or bad. Read your horror, read your comic books, like just read in general. That's why we wanted to do this podcast, so we can talk and encourage people to just read. But yeah, I
And
mean,
because it's fun.
and it's fun. Yeah, it's like it's
I
it's
love talking about books with you.
yes, because for me personally, even a book that I don't like is better than a movie that I hated.
Yes, because then I feel like I rot my brain for no reason when I watch certain movies.
Mhm. Mhm.
But with this, I don't even feel like anytime, even if it's a bad book, I don't feel like I rot my brain.
It doesn't feel as much as a waste of time as
Mhm.
like when you're watching something bad and you're like, bro, I could have been doing like 30 other things.
Yeah,
So with that said, we should probably start wrapping this up, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on already.
I got it all out of my system.
Okay, good. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you rate it?
I gave it a 2.
Okay. I gave it,
Was I supposed to explain
well,
more?
I was
I
just
thought
gonna
I
say,
explained it really well, but I gave it a 2.
yeah, I mean that's fair if that's all you want to say. I gave it a 3. The
Mhm.
reason I didn't feel comfortable rating it lower than a 3 is because there were so many parts that I actually deeply enjoyed. That's why, like, I don't regret having this book on my shelf. I'm not going to donate it or get rid of it or anything like that, because I mean, again, this was a fun experience in
Mhm.
itself. And then also, like, there were so many strong parts of it. And I want to believe that the intention that Iman had was greater than possibly the execution and the end result. But I enjoyed myself regardless, and I hope that she continues writing and improving her craft, because
He's not brown on the cover.
that's what I'm saying.
I thought he was brown. I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you. He's not brown. The way she described him with dark skin, I thought he had
I,
dark skin.
I
He's
thought
white.
he was too.
He's
But they
white.
also say he has like rune markings, and they don't show any of that on there either. So I don't take the cover that much. But with that said,
Sorry. Sorry, you can keep going.
no, you're good. I mean, I pretty much just said what I needed to say. And I hope she keeps writing. I'm not sure if I'll read anything else from her, but
I won't,
um
unfortunately.
yeah, I don't
I mean,
think so.
it's also just not my major genre either. I prefer like spooky stuff.
That's fair. If you have any other suggestions of either romantasy books that we should try to read, that would give us a better experience. If you want us to read more romance, I have a few others that I know I'm going to throw on the list to make Violet read anyway. But um, I don't know if I mean, it's hard because like it's so hard to pick books sometimes because we don't even know if it's going to be good or not until we read it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but either way,
That's the joy of it, though. It's like a
yes. If you guys have any suggestions, comment below. Send us an email at totallynotilliterate@gmail.com. Engage with us, talk to us, follow us on Instagram, Substack, YouTube. Anything else, Diva?
Bye.
Bye.